الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll continue with the ahkam, the rulings of as-sawm, fasting, and we'll also take hadith number 67, inshallah. We'll take hadith number 67, but first we continue with as-sawm. We start by sunan as-sawm, sunan as-sawm. And now we know that the word sunan, if it's mentioned in the books of fiqh, it refers to the recommended acts. And that's again to show the importance of knowing the terminology of every subject of ilm so that the person understand the words and the context of it. So the word sunnah can be mentioned in the books of the aqidah, refers to the aqidah. And it can be mentioned in the books of fiqh, refers to what's recommended. If it's mentioned in the books of the hadith, it's more general. It refers to anything that has been reported from the Prophet ﷺ. So sunan as-sawm, that means the recommended acts. If a person does it, he gets rewards. If he doesn't, there's no sin upon the person. He says first, تعجيل الفطر. تعجيل الفطر. To break the fast, to be in haste, to break the fast immediately after sunset. وهو الإفطار عقب تحقق غروب الشمس. Once a person knows that the sun had set, then it is from the sunnah, what's recommended is to immediately break the fast and not to wait. And this is the sunnah, that means this is what the Prophet ﷺ used to do, and hadith about this, but again we're being brief. This is a mas'ala. So the mas'ala is ta'jeel al-fitr. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His mercy, He made the people of bid'ah, innovations and deviations, they would oppose the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ for whatever reason, one of which is for them to be unique, for example, but they fall into this trap of opposing the sunnah. Like the Rafidah, for example, for them when they break their fast, they break it after Isha time. You know, when the Prophet ﷺ would be in haste in breaking the fast once, the entire sun disappears. So ta'jilu al-fitr. And he said, ما زال الناس بخير. People will continue to be upon goodness ما عجلوا الفطر, as long as they immediately break their fast. So, and of course the wisdom behind it and the submission in the heart, and that it's not about being hungry or being thirsty or one's desire, one's thinking, or if we wait till midnight, more struggle and more patience. No, it's about being obedient to Allah. So تعجيل الفطر. Number 2, كون الفطر على رطب أو تمر أو ماء. To break the fast on rutab. And rutab is the fresh dates, the one that is not dry. أو تمر, or dates, or ماء, which is water. وأفضل هذه الثلاثة أولها وآخرها أدناها. The best of it is, in that order, is a rutab. Rutab comes first, then tamr, then water. وهو الماء. So the least of the three is water. So that means if there's no fresh dates and there's no dry dates, and alhamdulillah there will be water and other things, start with the water. It's better than all kinds of other things, sambusa and this and that. It's better to start with the water if there's no dates, to start even with, as the Prophet ﷺ would take hasawat, would take 3 sips of water or something like this, and then you can eat whatever you want. So in that particular order, rutab, tamr, then ma'. ويستحب, and it's recommended, أن يفطر على وتر, that he would break the fast on witr, odd numbers, 3 أو 5 أو 7, 3 or 5 or 7. This is also from the sunnah. So the first one is to break the fast immediately, تعجيل الفطر. Second one, to be on rutab, or dates or water, and the best is rutab and the least is water, but water is better than anything else afterwards. And it's from the sunnah to make them as witr, as 3 or 5 or 7. The third sunnah here, الدعاء عند الإفطار, to make dua while the person is breaking his fast, right before breaking the fast. And the dua for the fasting person, some people think it's only while breaking the fast. No, there is while fasting, للصائم دعوة مستجابة. as the Prophet ﷺ said. For the fasting person, he has a accepted dua. And there's another hadith that talks about the dua عند فطر, to make dua just before he breaks his fast. So this is separate than the general dua throughout the entire day of the fasting person. He mentions here the dhikr, one of the adhkar here in Sunan Abi Dawud, but this particular dhikr is weak, which is اللهم لك صمنا وعلى رزقك أفطرنا فتقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. As far as the hadith is concerned, اللهم لك صمنا, O Allah, to you we fasted, وعلى رزقك, and upon your provisions we broke our fast, فتقبل منا, so accept from us, إنك أنت السميع العليم, indeed you are the all hearer, the all knower. It's fine if a person says it, even though there is, weakness. And there is the other authentic hadith, which is ابتلت العروق وذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله, which is a sound hadith. ذهب الظمأ, the thirst went away, وابتلت العروق, and the veins are wet, وثبت الأجر, and the rewards is well established, إن شاء الله تعالى. But it's not mentioned here. So the dua عند الإفطار. We'll take the dua عند الإفطار, to make dua while breaking the fast. The fourth sunnah, as-suhoor. And as-suhoor is the actual eating at the time of as-sahar, which is the last part of the night. Right before the adhan of al-fajr is called as-sahar. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. The believers, they make istighfar at the time of as-sahar. And as-suhoor with the dhamma is the actual eating. As-sahur with the fatha is the food itself. The food itself, it's called as-sahur, and the action is called as-suhoor. Right? So if you want to be specific, then you say, bring as-sahur, meaning the food that you would eat at the time of the suhoor. I'm eating as-suhoor. That means I'm doing the act of eating as-suhoor. But anyway, this is as-suhoor, which is before fajr, which is definitely with a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. But here, to add this, to make it more specific, تأخير السحور إلى الجزء الأخير من الليل. To delay the suhoor to the last part of the night. Even though the word as-suhoor by itself gives this meaning, but since a person, when he's fasting, usually if people would not eat before Fajr, say for example, before they go to sleep, they remember they're fasting, so they would eat something. So that's considered suhoor. But it's more recommended to make it right before Fajr, even if it's a sip of water. And of course, also, it's from the Sunnah to include dates, as the Prophet ﷺ said, نعم السحور التمر. The best of the suhoor is tamr. Now, as-sahur with a fatha is the food itself. And as-suhoor is the act of eating the whole meal. The act that a person would do is the suhoor. But the food itself, the actual physical food that is eaten, it's called as-sahur. So it's more recommended to be the last part of the night. So these are 5 sunan. Ta'jeel al-fitr, to be in haste and breaking the fast after sunset, of course. To make it on rutab, if not, then tamr, if not, then water, and to make it witr. Number 3, to make dua right before making the iftar. Number 4, as-suhoor in general, which is eating in the last part of the night. And number 5, to make it the last part of the night, to delay it as much as a person can, right before Fajr, right before the adhan of Fajr. This is from the sunan of as-sawm. Then makruhat as-sawm, what's disliked for in fasting. And makruhat, al-makruh is like the opposite of the recommended acts, which is if a person doesn't do it, he get rewards. If he does it, there's no sin. But why it's makruh? He mentioned something about the makruhat in general, or what's disliked in general. He says يكره للصائم أمور من شأنها الإفضاء إلى إفساد الصوم. That there are certain things that it's makruh, disliked for the fasting person to do, that it might lead the person to break his fast. So it doesn't break the fast, but it can lead the person to break his fast, and that's why it's makruh, to come closer to an area where a person might break his fast. وإن كانت في حد ذاتها لا تفسد الصوم. Even though in itself it does not break the fast. So this is basically the definition of the makruhat in general. When something is makruh, why is it makruh even though it's not haram? Because it's closer to the haram. It's not haram in itself, but the more the person becomes at ease with it, then eventually shaitan doesn't leave a person alone. He would take him to the haram. And that's why the makruh, another quick benefit here, just to get the makruh easy to understand. If there's a need, it is not makruh anymore. So if there's a need for a makruh, there's a need for a person to do something that originally it's makruh, then it's not makruh because there's a need for it. If there's a need for it, it depends on what the makruh is. So what are the makruhat for fasting? المبالغة في المضمضة والاستنشاق عند الوضوء. While making wudu, المضمضة والاستنشاق, the mouth, gargling, putting the water in the mouth and moving it and spit it, and then to take the water into the nose and then to get it out. This is normally المبالغة, or to do it in a the word mubalagha is not extreme, but to do it thoroughly, this is good. It's recommended in wudu. Unless a person is fasting, he should still make madmada and istinshaq, but what's makruh is to do it in a vigorous way. So don't put a whole bunch of water in your mouth, and then you move it strongly in your mouth, right? Because it can be easily slipping in, right? Or sniffing lots of water in the nose like this, because it can go down. So this is where al-mubalagha. If a person is not fasting, make mubalagha. It's from the sunnah. But as long as you don't do more than 3, even if a person is not fasting, because more than 3 times, the Prophet ﷺ forbade that. But while fasting, still do madmada. Some people, they wipe with their fingers on their lips. They did not make madmada like this. Water has to enter, it has to move, and then you spit it out. But don't put too much. And the same thing with the nose, you don't have to take it all the way up. So what's makruh here is what? Al-madmada wal-istinshaq? No. What's makruh is al-mubalagha, to do extreme or to do it in a vigorous way. That's al-mubalagha. Number 2, al-qubla, or kissing, if it causes the person to have a desire that can lead him to break his fast, because one of the things that breaks the fast is the relations between the husband and the wife. And the fast is broken as a result of this if it leads to anything that excreted like al-madhi, which is different than the mani. And we talked about the madhi and the mani in the tahara. Al-madhi with the dal is what comes out as a result of thinking or touching and things of that nature. And this is not the seminal fluid. This is, or they call it seminal fluid, I guess. It's the transparent one, the one that is does not come with force or so. If the madhi comes out while a person is fasting, it does not break the fast. But if it comes as a result of something like this is a mas'ala. According to some, it breaks the fast. That means a person, he did something against fasting that caused this to happen. Al-mani, where the human being is created from, that of course that breaks the fast. If a person intentionally did, then we'll talk about al-jima'. So, but here what's makruh is the kiss or the like of that, as he mentioned it, because it can lead to what breaks the fast. Number 3, إدامة النظر بشهوة إلى الزوجة. If a person keep on looking with desire to his wife, for example, this is makruh because also it leads to breaking the fast. Number 4, al-fikr fi sha'n al-jima', to think of things that would cause the person to attain the desire, that also can lead to break his fast. So that means the person has to stop the trail of thinking so that it doesn't lead to breaking the fast. All of this is makruh. Number 5, al-lams. So all of these details, touching with the hand, that can also lead to breaking the fast. Okay, so you see many of it is with regards what breaks the fast: food and drink and the relations. So anything that leads to it or can lead to it, then it becomes makruh, even though in itself it is not breaking the fast. Clear? طيب. الأعذار المبيحة للفطر. The next point. Am I going too fast? Going too fast? Anything missed? No. So طيب, I just wanted these last ones is kind of we don't want to be too explicit, but it's so we said the makruhat again. He mentioned 5 makruhat, 5 disliked matters. 1 related to food and drink, and the other 4 related to what breaks the fast as a result of relations between the husband and the wife. So the first one is al-mubalagha, to be extreme in madmada wal istinshaq. And the 4 is kissing, looking, thinking, touching. Please. The next point, al-a'dhar al-mubiha al-fitr. Al-a'dhar, jam'u udhr, the plural of udhr, which is the excuses that permits the person to break his fast. Fasting is an obligation. It's one of the pillars of Islam. But since it's abstaining from food and drink and necessities of life, some people, they might not be able to do it. So it requires the ability to fast. As we said, one of the conditions of shurutul wujub, one of the conditions of obligations of fasting, al-qudra ala siyam, to have the ability to fast. If someone doesn't have the ability physically to fast, fast is not obligatory upon him. So therefore, there are certain things that makes the person excused and there's no sin upon the person. And these a'dhar, some of it requires making up the fast. Some of the a'dhar requires for the person to expiate. There is kafara to it. And some does not have kafara, just to make up the fast. So with the details that will come. Number 1, يجب الفطر على الحائض والنفساء. يجب. The woman in her menses and after birth bleeding, she has to break her fast. It is not permissible for her to fast. Fasting, what are the periods of fasting? When we say fasting, does it mean not to eat and drink? No. Because the periods of fasting is what? Al-imsak, to withhold from eating and drinking, and what breaks the fast, with the niyyah of at-ta'abbud, the niyyah of worshipping. Correct? These are pillars. And there was a third one, which is the time from Fajr to Maghrib. So when they say it is mandatory upon the woman, if she has her menses or after birth bleeding, that she has to break her fast, does that mean that she has to eat and drink? No. If she stays the whole day without eating and drinking, but in her intentions, she's not fasting, because the pillar of fasting is intentions. So that means she broke her fast. So what is meant by here is that she's not fasting. It is not permissible for her to fast. يجب الفطر على الحائض والنفساء. Number 2, من يحتاج إليه لإنقاذ معصوم من مهلكة لغرق ونحو. This is an excuse not for oneself but for someone else. A person is needed to save the life of someone. And the only way for him to save the life of someone is that he has to break the fast. And they always mention someone is drowning. And the only way for him to be able to save his life, he has to, break his fast. It requires energy or something, whether it's before or after. He knows that if he does that type of way to save his life, that either he would have to break his fast before or after. That's fine. They say then it's okay to save one's life. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in the heart. There's no tricks. I'm playing tricks here, of course. So anything that is needed, and it's open to the issue of matters of necessity, saving someone's life, that requires for the person, for example, to break his fast, then that's, of course, an excuse. and a person should do so to save someone's life, whether it's his own self or someone else. And these things can come up. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Say, for example, and I don't want to make up examples that make things loose. But say, for example, someone is needed to operate on him on a surgery, and that person, for example, he's very old. The surgeon is very old, for example, and for him to stand for a few hours, and it has to be immediately, he cannot do it because he's fasting, and he's not having anything scheduled, so he's fasting. But they needed him now. Otherwise, the person's life is in danger. So for that person to be able to operate good, he has to have some food. Then we would say to him, eat, so that you can save the life of a human being. So, but it's not like I feel hungry, I want to eat. So it has to be with what's mentioned to save someone's life. Number 3, musafir, someone that is a traveler, يباح له القصر, permissible for him to shorten the salah, to make qasr. So فيسن له الفطر, it's recommended for him to break the fast. And this is a mas'ala, not, mas'ala here, the musafir. Musafir, of course, no one is to blame the traveling person if he breaks his fast. No doubt that this is one of the a'dar, one of the excuses to break the fast. And as the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ الصِّيَامُ فِي السَّفَرِ, it's not out of righteousness that a person fasts during traveling, meaning he should not think that this is a virtuous act. I mean, you get more rewards if you fast when you're traveling. No. You have the option either to fast or to break your fast. Of course, you have to make up the day. But is it better for the person to break his fast, or it's better to continue fasting? This is the mas'ala here. So he says here, فَيُسَنُّ لَهُ الْفِطْرِ, it's recommended for him to break the fast. Unless it's easier for him not to fast. That's up to the person. And Musafir, he is the Amir of his own self. Whatever is easier for him, there's no harm, there's no difficulty, there's no issues of it's more comfortable now, air conditioning, traveling, doesn't matter. It's about the traveling, it's not about the difficulty. It's about the fact that he's a traveler. Number 4, so this is the Musafir. Number 4, Marid يخاف الضرر. Marid is a sick person. جزاكم الله خير. الله يبارك فيك. مريض يخاف الضرر. Marid is a sick person, fears harm. So everything has a clause to it, so you have to be careful with the language of the fiqh. The musafir, what was mentioned about the musafir? Any musafir? The musafir, which makes a person a musafir or a traveler, if it's permissible for him to shorten the salah. If he can shorten the salah, that means he can break his fast. And the marid, the sick person, that fears harm to him if he continues to fast. Because if someone has some cold symptoms, that's marid, he's sick. But does he then can break his fast? It depends. If he fears harm for him, and this is something that has to be well established with the people of knowledge of the whatever expertise they have, then it's permissible for that person to break his fast. مريض يخاف الضرر, a sick person that he fears harm. Or someone in bed because he broke his leg, for example. He's considered to be sick, but does it affect him if he fasts or not? So in the situations where people are in doubt, then to ask a trustworthy doctor, for example. Trustworthy, and this is a separate subject, but when we say the doctor would know, it has to be, in many cases, of course, he has to be a Muslim and he trustworthy. Even though the doctor might be a non-Muslim that is dealing with the patient, but being a non-Muslim, he does not know the importance of fasting, for example. So he thinks it's okay, break your fast, so what? It's to be on the safe side. It's easier that way. But when it's a Muslim to be consulted, because the Muslim, he knows the importance of fasting. And this is his expertise. He would say then this person should break his fast. So in the situations where it's in doubt or a person is not really sure, The same thing with many things. Like, someone did surgery in his eyes. Can he make sujood or not? A Muslim trustworthy doctor in his area, and the matter is explained to him. If it's in doubt, if it's for sure, then there is no need. But if people are in doubt, and when they ask him, and he knows the importance of the sujood, that this is part of the salah, then he's the one that would say, no, he should not make sujood. So in many cases like that, it's to do it in such a way. So مريض يخاف الضرر. I'm going more in details here. But so number 4, when someone's sick, fears harm. Number 5, حاضر. Since we're learning some of the terminologies, and I'm intentionally mentioning some of the Arabic here so that we get used to listening to these words. We know that al-musafir is the traveler. The حاضر is the one that is not traveler. So the muqim or the حاضر, the one that is present, the one that is resident. سافر أثناء النهار. This is the مسألة. Someone that is not traveler, but he travels during the day. He started the day fasting, no intentions of whatsoever, and then all of a sudden he needs to travel. Can he break his fast after he leaves the town? Because he cannot break the fast if he's still in town. But if he leaves, now he's a traveler, he can shorten the salah. Can he break his fast? Many people, especially with nowadays, the contemporary, even with the major scholars, yes, breaks his fast. But here he says, al-afdal adam al-fitr. It's better that he doesn't break his fast, خروجا من الخلاف, to be away from the differences of opinions. ماذا Imam Ahmad rahimahullah that to break the fast. But can say the Jumhur is, and the Shafi'is, for example, you do not break your fast in this case. Because it's different than a traveler. Someone started the day not as fasting, and then something happened and he needs to travel. They say, no, he has to continue the day with fasting. But again, the correct opinion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, but it's a very difference of opinions, that the person has the option to break his fast. There's no problem if he breaks his fast. But he says here, it's better to avoid it, to be away from the differences of opinions. So this is حاضر سافر. Someone that is not musafir and something happened that he had to travel. Clear? What does it say? This is obviously he stops, but he has to make up the day. This is what's in the English. This is another mas'ala. If someone is a traveler, so now that traveler he's not fasting, or he's fasting. If he's fasting, or say, okay, he's a traveler, he comes back home. If he was not fasting, once he reaches home and he's not fasting, he needs to abstain from eating and drinking till Maghrib. And of course, he has to make up the day. But the reason why he abstained from eating and drinking, not because he's fasting now, he's not fasting, but it's for the hurma of the month, for the sanctuary of the month of Ramadan, that he's not a traveler now. So he stopped eating and drinking, but he has to make up the day. If he traveled while fasting and he reaches home, of course, now he's not a traveler anymore. So that means the ahkam, the rulings of the traveler is gone from him. So of course, obviously that he has to continue the fast. But here, no, it's actually حاضر سافر أثناء النهار. Right? So someone that is present and then he traveled during the day. See? No. This will come, inshallah. I think he would mention it. When someone is, question is, if someone is sick and he fears harm, is it mandatory for him to break his fast, or it's recommended, or it's permissible? It can be obligatory upon him if he fears for his life. And this, I think it should be mentioned here. Maybe it's not. I think it should be mentioned. But anyway, so if someone if he does not break his fast, most likely that he will die, for example. Then it's an obligation upon him, of course, to break his fast because he has to save his life. But if it's the harm is, a person, it's not going to cause him for example, not to able to fast the next days and things like this, then it's permissible for him. Can be recommended if it's maybe would better for him that maybe because he's not going to break his fast in the next days. So this is also to assess this by some trustworthy doctor in the case of to prevent harm. No. تفضل. Can describe? Musafir, a traveler is the one that he can make qasr, which basically, when we talked about al-musafir, either to be known by the norm of the people and not necessarily a distant wise. Some of the ulama, they put a distant to it as a way to make it easy, like the 48 miles or so. But there's no evidence when it comes to distance. It's what the norm of the people in their locality, what they consider traveling versus not. So, and this is an obvious, well-known thing in any locality. So, for example, if someone is here going to Springfield, he's a traveler. But if he goes to the other side of the town, for example, that's even might be more than 48 miles, for example, but it's not considered traveling. It's just suburbs or something like this. So, and plus, the person has to be moved away from the city, from the buildings, and he sets his own on the way. So it has to be with the urf, with the norm of the people. No. And if a person is in doubt, that means he's not a traveler till it becomes well known that he's a traveler. While he's going, while he's coming back, yes, he's a traveler. Unless this is his commute every day. If it's a commute every day going back and forth, that means he's not considered traveler. We can stop here if you guys, because the next one, مفسدات الصوم, what breaks the fast, and there are 12 things here. Should we stop? Oh, I'm sorry, number 6. I didn't do number 6. Number 6, that's a tricky one. It's not tricky, but requires to pay attention, inshallah. حامل ومرضع, pregnant woman and a woman that is breastfeeding. The pregnant woman and someone that is breastfeeding. He says here, I'm going to read. خافتا, dual tense, because now he's talking about the hamil. So the hamil and the murda, the pregnant woman and the breastfeeding, they both have the same ruling, right? Both have the same ruling, whether she's pregnant or breastfeeding. خافتا على أنفسهما. They both feared for their own life or for their own selves. Doesn't have to be they fear for their own life, they're going to die, but they fear harm would happen to them or to their child. So either they fear for themselves and that's why they break their fast, or they feared for their child and that's why they broke their fast. Right? So you see the mas'ala here. So the pregnant woman, she's breaking her fast. Why? Because of she's worried about her own health or she's worried about her child. The same thing, the breastfeeding woman. She's breaking her fast because of herself or because of her child. He says, وَلَوْ أَفْطَرَتَ, if they break their fast, خَوْفًا عَلَى الْوَلَدِ فَقَطْ. So if she fears for both herself and her child, of course she breaks her fast, no doubt about this. If they break their fast out of the fear for the child only, she's strong, she's good, she doesn't worry about herself, but she might not have milk for her child. She's worried about the child that she's pregnant. So if it's only for the child, of course, she still breaks her fast then in that case. But then there's a thing here, لَزِمَ وَلِيُّهُ إِطْعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ لِكُلِّ يَوْمٍ. His wali, the wali of the child, the guardian of the child, then it's upon him to feed a poor person for every day. Because she broke her fast for his child. not for herself. So if she break her fast for herself, she make up the day. If she breaks her fast for herself and the child, she make up the day. If she breaks her fast because of the child, then the guardian, he feeds a poor person for the child. And for her to make up the day, to be on the safe side. Right? But who's paying is the guardian of the child. وفي كل فإن عليهما القضاء. In either case, she has to make up the fast. Okay, he takes that opinion. Okay, so we're taking the opinion of what? That in all cases, the hamil and the murda, she would make up the day. But if she broke her fast for the child, then the guardian of the child, he has to feed the poor for every day. Otherwise, she just make up the day. Is it clear?
If she's not fasting for herself, there's no.
If she's breaking her fast for herself, there's no feeding. If she's breaking her fast because of herself and the child, no feeding, because she's breaking her fast for herself. But if she's breaking her fast for the child only, then there's feeding. And in all cases, she needs to make up the day if she has the means. No. Now, feeding the poor, we'll talk about the feeding. Feeding the poor is either to give them some grains that they can save, and this is basically nusf sa', something that is, 700 grams of something. 1 kilogram is more than enough. Or to feed them one meal that would be satisfying, that they don't have to eat the next meal. So either to cook food or to give them grain. No, it has to be food. Has to reach the poor food. No. And we'll
break their fast for themselves, but then all the days accumulate to be quite a bit, and they try to make it up, but they're not able to. Is that when they pay for those days after?
No. This is another mas'ala. If a woman, she broke her fast, say not for her child, for her own self, and she was pregnant that year, and the next year she's breastfeeding and she broke her fast for her own self, and the year after she was pregnant, and then breastfeeding. So she has 5-6 years she did not fast, and it's all for herself. Should she make up the days and that's it? This is an important one. Either she makes up the day, and to be away from all the differences of opinions, she would make up the days whenever it's easy for her to do that. But if the next Ramadan comes and she did make up the days, then to feed a poor for every day. This makes it away from all the differences of opinions. Because some said it's nothing but feeding the poor. Some said just to make up the days and that's it. Some said if the next Ramadan comes, and this is general rule for everyone, someone has days to make up in Ramadan, and the next year comes and he didn't make them these days, he still have to make up the days plus feeding a poor, because the next year entered.
Feeding on the poor has to be in Ramadan.
No, anytime. If someone is traveling for a permissible reason, and he's going to be there in that place for 3 days or 3 nights or less, because more than that means he becomes a resident. But if he's 3 nights or less, he can break his fast even if there's no tiring or there's no reason. Just the fact that he's a traveler is sufficient for the person to break his fast. He doesn't have to have an extra reason why he's breaking his fast while traveling. He doesn't have to be tired, doesn't have to be in need to break his fast. Just the fact that he's a traveler is sufficient. We'll take the hadith inshallah, and then if you have any questions. Hadith number 67, very easy. hadith inshallah in fiqh. Hadith number 67. And the reason why the numbers are different every day because it's all the books, the 4 different books. So that's why we put them together like that. Are you there, inshallah? You ready? Say, عن عبد الله ابن زيد ابن عاصم رضي الله عنه في صفة الوضوء قال ومسح صلى الله عليه وسلم برأسه فأقبل بيديه وأدبر ومسح صلى الله عليه وسلم برأسه فأقبل بيديه وأدبر. The hadith متفق عليه. The hadith very easy and simple. Abdullah ibn Zayd رضي الله عنه ibn Asim, and he's from the Ansar. He said في صفة الوضوء, in the صفة, in the explanation of the wudu of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said ومسح, and he wiped, meaning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiped برأسه, he wiped his head. He's describing the wudu of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, but he specifically with wiping the head. ومسح برأسه, and he wiped his head. We'll talk about the back here. He wiped his head. فأقبل بيديه وأدبر. فأقبل means when you إقبال, that means you're going forward, and أدبر going backward. So that means the Prophet ﷺ went from the front all the way to the back, and then went from the back to the front. So this is فأقبل بيديه, with his 2 hands, وأدبر. فأقبل وأدبر. Right? So this is the most recommended act while wiping the head. And the word ومسح برأسه, because the ayah says وامسحوا برؤوسكم, right? وامسحوا برؤوسكم. The bit here that caused the differences of opinions in the verse is that wiping part of the head, because some said the bit here للتبعيض, that means part of the head. Wipe برأسه, by wipe some of your head, right? So is it some of the head or the entire head? This is a valid differences of opinions. Even though the Jumhur, the majority, that if a part of the head, if it's wiped, that's sufficient. But the other opinion, which is وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, the back here can either the entire head or a part of the head. And this is a very obvious meaning that it's the entire head. And he said وَمَسَحَ بِرَأْسِهِ فَأَقْبَلَ بِيَدَيْهِ وَأَدْبَرَ. This is the most perfect way, going back and forth. But the other opinion, which says that it's the entire head. Why? Because now the ayah says can mean this way or that way. What makes the explanation to in that dispute is the action of the Prophet ﷺ. Did the Prophet ﷺ ever wipe part of his head? Only if he wears imamah. But if there's no imamah or so, he would wipe the entire head. So that's why they said, and that's what explains the verse. So what's mandatory is to wipe the entire head. And here, the most perfect way is al-iqbal wal-idbar, is to go back and forth. And this is, by the way, for both men and women. It's not about the hair, it's about the head. Unless a person wears amama or a woman wearing hijab, then you can wipe part of the head, and then the rest, you would wipe the imama or she wipes her hijab. But if the head is exposed, even if a person has a long hair, it's not about the hair. So he goes from, again, the hand like that, wiping, going all the way to the back of the head, and then coming back to the front. Here. So ومسح صلى الله عليه وسلم برأسه فأقبل بيديه وأدبر. And أقبل forward, أدبر backward. And دبر كل صلاة, the end of every صلاة.